Hello World, episode 48, live and direct, 86 Boxing Podcast. Welcome. Thank you for joining. If you're watching this in the replay, I appreciate it. But we're here to talk boxing, as we always do. A lot of great action this past weekend. Thank you in advance to those who joined and check it out. But definitely, we're here to talk about some of the great action that took place this weekend. I feel like boxing is on a stride right now. We're doing very well in the sport as far as getting some of these, top tier matchups that we have routinely sought. I think that promoters are starting to figure it out in some sense, or at least they're being left with no choice, of course, because we as the fans, I feel like we do have power in numbers. There are a lot of these varying streaming services out there now that broadcast boxing, and the overall intent is for them to get individuals to subscribe and continually to subscribe. In order to do that, they know that there's a need for top level and top caliber fights where we're seeing the best fight the best. And I think we do get that oftentimes. I would say it usually plays out more so in the public's eye there at the very, very top level when we want to see, say, the two best in a division compete with each other. The case being the likes of Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. But generally speaking, we do tend to get some of the bigger fights that we want to see, especially in those lower weight classes. And I think that as long as that momentum continues, then the sport in itself will do well and will continue to strive. That being said, excuse me, yeah, I might need a little water or something. But to jump straight into the fights, there were a number of big ones as mentioned. The one I want to start with, though, is Bam Rodriguez taking on Sirisikat Sor Rungvisai. Bam Rodriguez is the youngest champion in boxing, or at least when he won his title, he was the youngest champion in boxing, and I think that still holds true. But he is the WBC Super Flyweight champion, so he took on rugged veteran and huge puncher Mr. Sirisikat Sor Rungvisai of Thailand. And Sor Rungvisai, of course, if you recall, is the individual that put an end to Chocolatito's run by knocking him out in the second fight. The first fight between Sor Rungvisai and Chocolatito was disputed, though I felt Sor Rungvisai won clearly enough. But that being said, all questions were answered in their rematch when he knocked him out. Shout out to my mother. Hey now, 86. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining up, for sure. But yeah, that being said, Bam Rodriguez was taking a leap, or what was considered a huge leap, by defending his title against the big punching Sirisikat Sor Rungvisai. In Sor Rungvisai, he has legitimate power at super flyweight, and he has shown that in his ability to stop some of the elite opponents. And he's racked up a ton of wins. But that being said, Bam Rodriguez came in determined. He's one of those young fighters who seems to want to have that edge. He seems to want to have people on his back or on his shoulders as he carries them to victory. And I think he showed that last night because he absolutely dominated Sirisikat Sor Rungvisai, picking up an 8th round TKO victory. It was actually a thing of beauty. That's to say the least. It was a thing of beauty. Bam Rodriguez, he is a fan of Vasily Lomachenko. So when you see Bam Rodriguez, you see, much like Lomachenko, great footwork. And I thought that was on display last night. His footwork was so brilliant that it didn't offer Sor Rungvisai an opportunity to really land cleanly. He nullified Sor Rungvisai's offense completely. Now, Sor Rungvisai was able to land a few things here or there. That being said, he didn't really get the opportunity to put his power on full display because when he was swinging, he was often missing or it wasn't landing cleanly. And I think that's a testament to the skill set that Bam Rodriguez had at this ripe age of 22 years of age, rather. Now, Sor Rungvisai, as we know, he's one of those fighters who has thudding power. He's shown that in the past, and the way he knocked out Chocolatito, that was like his moment of arrival. But here with Bam Rodriguez, when he did land, you could see that, of course, his power is still there, and it is that thudding power, as I mentioned, but it was just a little bit too far and in between for him to actually make a difference in this fight. Now, Bam Rodriguez, I mean, he has a passionate fan base, it seems. He's out of the San Antonio area, and San Antonio was representing last night. They came out in full force to support him. And I think that shows that he has star potential. And with his performance on this grand stage, which is his biggest stage yet, he didn't let the moment get too big for him. He seized the opportunity and he came through in a major way. And people are going to be talking about this fight. And I think they're going to be talking about it for the next few months because of the fact that the way he so thoroughly dominated Sor Rungvisai, now it's a question of who's next. And with that, two names that are out there, of course, are El Gallo, Juan Francisco Gonzalez, or Estrada, my apologies. So Juan Francisco Estrada is out there. He's considered to be the best at 115 pounds by many. Bam Rodriguez is knocking on the door now. Also, Chocolatito is still out there. And based on his last few fights, he looks to still be one of the very best there at 115 pounds and would pose a challenge to anyone, including El Gallo, who, when they last fought, I thought Chocolatito deserved that victory. I thought he pulled it out a good bit. Of course, it's subjective, but that was my thought behind it. And I think that a lot of other people that I've seen, at least on social media, and then those I've talked to about it directly, tended to agree that Chocolatito might have had the edge in that fight. That being said, I can only imagine what a Bam Rodriguez Chocolatito fight would look like because we all know that Chocolatito is all action. He comes forward, he throws punches in bunches, and we saw a good bit of that last night from Bam Rodriguez. It wasn't that he was just outboxing Sor Rungvisai, but he was landing some sharp punches, sharp combination punches and counters, and he was just really battering and beating up Sor Rungvisai to the point of Sor Rungvisai's eyes. You could just see that he had visible damage. His eyes were probably near closing, so he seemingly got out of there he was taken out of there at just the right time because he was really taking a beating at that point. And Rodriguez, his combinations were so fast that Sor Rungvisai couldn't keep up at all. And if you watch the replay or if you had seen it, you will notice that Sor Rungvisai, he was certainly trying, but he was coming up just short with his swingers, sometimes swinging and just wildly missing because Rodriguez, he didn't stay in any one place too long. He was in and out of there. He was just applying his craft, jumping in and out of there, just pasting him with leather. But yeah, the sky's the limit for Bam Rodriguez. I think he's going to be knocking on the door of that pound for pound list, that mythical pound for pound boxing list that everyone has. I think that Bam is going to be knocking right there on the door of it. And he has an opportunity to find himself within that pound for pound list in a short period, I would say, considering or depending on where you have him. But if he takes out the likes of Juan Francisco Estrada and Chocolatito, I think that says something. And this young man will get his recognized due by doing so. So I would say Bam Rodriguez, if you haven't seen him, he's definitely worth checking out. He's worth the price of admission. He's someone that not only looks good on TV, but I'd imagine he looks good when you're there in person, seeing him fighting live. And that's a rare talent, a rare breed there. So Bam Rodriguez, the WBC Super Flyweight champion. I'm going to pull up. I want to see who has the other belts that are there at Superfly. But, Superfly is one of those divisions. It's been pretty hot in boxing over the last several years. and they've seemingly maintained a high level of talent. So it is definitely a worthy division without a doubt. So I hope that we get to continue to see some of these good matchups that are out there for the division in itself. Shout out to Bruce Gas, Boxing, Jazz, and More. Shout out, Bruce. Salute to you, my friend. Salute my brother, Bruce Gas. If you don't follow, go check him out. I'm telling you, you will enjoy it. He had on Tim Witherspoon at his last, or one of his last actual broadcast. It was great. You got an in-depth look and discussion with the former champion. So definitely go Gas. I mean, what better name is there than Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz? You know, I mean, salute, my friend. Once again, definitely check him out. And yeah, so looking at the ratings at Super Flyweight, it looks like Juan Estrada has the ring and WBA title. Then WBO, Kazuto Ioka, the Japanese fighter, he has the actual WBO title, and then the IBF is held by Fernando Martinez. Now, I can't recall if I've seen Fernando Martinez. Maybe not, but they're out there. And then you have some other guys out there like Donny Nietes, Joshua Franco, who Bam Rodriguez isn't going to fight. But I mean, if that opportunity came about, they're brothers. So Bam has stated that he is not going to fight Joshua Franco. But Franco's out there. I think he's next in line for a shot at Juan Francisco Estrada. So depending what happens with that fight, it could be Estrada and Bam Rodriguez potentially after that, and what will be a unification fight. If it's Franco, then Estrada moves on to fight someone else, maybe Chocolatito or something, or maybe Ioka. The sky's the limit there. I mean, so many potential good matchups that are out there that you never know. So hopefully we get to see some of those great matchups here in the near term. But definitely a hot division right there. And I think that Bam Rodriguez adds to the tone-setting streak that Superfly is on. And I could think it will continue to be one of the better divisions in the sport. And they're getting more shine than they have in the past. And I think that's a good thing for the sport as a whole, because any fight in or around that weight typically delivers from an action standpoint. And I know people love action, so they typically deliver in that regard. So definitely worthwhile checking out Bam Rodriguez. Now, jumping up in weight and in championships is not too far from that weight class. We're talking 122 pounds. So Mirajan Akhmadaliev, he night as well, he took on Ronny Rios, the rugged veteran Ronny Rios, who was getting his third opportunity, I believe, at a title shot. Somewhere in there. It's been unsuccessful thus far. But he came into the fight, and it was pretty much an even matchup as far as, I believe, the expectations and the thought of how it may potentially go. That MJ definitely is one of these young up-and-coming fighters who has shown that he has a high degree of boxing IQ and ability in general. Athletic guy, Uzbek fighter. And Ronny Rios being a veteran who has been battle-tested, who's come up short a couple of times. But that being said, very much a live dog with a chance and opportunity to really give MJ some problems. Now, the fight went down, and MJ's WBA Super Bantamweight title was on the line, along with the IBF Junior Featherweight title. So MJ holds both of those. They were both on the line at this particular time. And it turned out that MJ showed that he is an elite level boxer. And I think he proved that when he initially beat Danny Roman to pick up the titles, or at least that his first run at a championship. And he showed that last night as well. He was, in a sense, dominating Ronny Rios, who remained tough and game throughout the fight, but he just couldn't muster up enough to really get to MJ. And MJ, this being Mirjan Akhmadaliev, he has an elite level set of he's elite with his reflexes. His footwork is great. His timing is great. All of that stuff is just elite. And he can put his punches together well, additionally. And he showed that last night. He was landing some heavy body blows to Ronny Rios that you could see visibly hurting him. And this happened on multiple occasions. So just when Ronny Rios was in the range that he needed to be, where he could exchange punches, he would get caught with something. It was usually to the body that hurt him, but also MJ was landing to his head as well. And some great hooks, and great left hands. He's a southpaw, so he was landing that as well. And Rios just really didn't have an answer for him. When it was all said and done, I only had Rios winning one round, and I think a case could be made that he didn't win any rounds. I think on Chris Mannix's scorecard, he had Rios winning 2 rounds, but it was that type of fight. Not only that, MJ, he ended up hurting his hand his left hand, him being a southpaw, that's his strong hand. He ended up hurting that hand in the second round, is what he said in an interview. So you could see that he stopped throwing the left hand as often as he was throwing it early on. And he really just started to rely on his right hand, generally using his right jab, but he was also mixing in a quick little right hook he's mixing in a quick right hook that kept catching Rios by surprise, and it was snapping Rios's head. You could just see that he wasn't prepared for it. So I think they got wind of the fact that MJ wasn't using his left hand, but it didn't really stop him, and Rios still didn't have an answer for him. And just when as I mentioned, just when he tried to get in, and it seemed like he was in range and and was where he essentially needed to be to really show his best performance, that there was nullified just once again because of the fact that MJ, he just seems to be very seasoned even at just 10 fights in, because I believe this was his 11th fight, if I'm not mistaken. And he looks like a seasoned veteran who has been doing this for a longer period of time. That just goes to show that he's getting better and going to get better. And I think that's high regards for a fighter who has only that limited amount of fights at the pro level. But I think, of course, we've seen more of that here in the last several years, where some of these guys are coming out and they have a ton of amateur experience, and they don't want to take that traditional route of getting 20 to 25 fights that were specifically tailor-made for them to look good. They're more so looking to get right there into championship and title contention within a few fights, actually. And that was the case with Mirjan Akhmadaliev. I think when he won his title, it was his 7th fight, if I'm not mistaken. So that goes to show that these guys are on a fast track. And this is the case with a lot of these young boxers coming up who have these high amateur pedigrees these days, especially for those that are in Eastern Europe or what can be considered the Western Russia area. Those guys are coming in seasoned and ready to go, or at least as close to seasoned as possible, because he's not the only one. There's some other ones out there who are like that as well. But I think that MJ showed that he's a special fighter because of the fact that even despite his hand being hurt, in the 12th round, he went for it. He didn't hold back. He started to let off. He was like, hey, my hand is messed up, but it doesn't matter. I need to close this show. And that's rare. You don't see that often you only see it at the elite level. And he's shown to be at the elite level, but he closed the show by going off, knocking or stopping at least Ronny Rios. He started back working the body, started getting off excellent combinations that were just landing with authority in the 12th round, and he looked as fresh as he had been throughout the fight or in the earlier rounds of the fight. And he ended up dropping Rios with a barrage of punches. Rios was able to get back to his feet, and shortly thereafter, he was starting to get a little bit battered again, and ultimately the referee jumped in to stop the fight, which was a great call. And that goes to show you that MJ is a rare breed of talent. He's one of those guys who goes for the finish. There are others out there who are like that, but you see that with the likes of Terrence Crawford. Canelo, he even tries to go for the finish when he gets that opportunity. Errol Spence, he will try for type of things. Lomachenko, he was like that as well. He was one of those guys who were going for the finish. So not only just outbox a fighter, but also try and legitimately taking them out, knowing that there's value to the knockout. And he closed the show well. He wasn't cared about what firepower was coming back from Ronny Rios. He probably had tasted the best of what Rios had to offer, and he didn't care. So messed up left hand and all. He went in, closed the show out in a way that is really star-making. I think we have a very special fighter right here on our hands, and I want to see more of him. I've seen him fight a number of times. I saw him fight live, so he is the real deal. Just even seeing him live a few years back. I mean, what a fighter. Check out Mirjan Akhmadaliev if you don't know him. Mirjan Akhmadaliev. MJ is what he goes by. That makes it a little bit easier to remember his name. And he came out to some Michael Jackson as well. So he knows that, and he's really taking this MJ moniker on very well. But special fighter right there. Definitely one to watch for. And what's next for him is potentially a unified matchup. It may be an undisputed matchup, if I'm not mistaken. But for sure, some type of unification. But it's going to be with Cool Boy Stephen Fulton. At least that's what the intent is, to potentially have that fight. And correctly, yes, it will be for the undisputed champion at 122 pounds if this fight takes place, because Fulton has the WBC and WBO title. And of course, the Ring will likely put the title on the line as well for the winner. So this means that for what would be at least the third or fourth time this year, we will have an undisputed championship title fight if this takes place here, which I believe it has a possibility of actually happening because Stephen Fulton just fought a couple of weeks, maybe a few weeks back. So with MJ having fought here last night, I think the timing will work out pretty well. By the time that both of them are ready to go, they will be, or they will have had, a good amount of time to recover and get themselves prepared and trained for the next one. And neither of them took much damage in their previous fights. The only outlier, of course, is Mirjan's hand. So depending on what's the deal with his left hand, you did say he hurt. I don't know if it was to the extent of him feeling anything breaking or anything to that degree. But depending on how his hand heals up and when he's ready to go from that, we could see another undisputed championship fight. We had an undisputed fight at 154 pounds with Charlo beating Castaño. We had another one recently that I can't even recall what it was, but so I think this will be the third one. And we have a potential for a fourth also if we get Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. So that would be undisputed at 147 pounds. And there's been talk, and the last I seen, at least, there was a report that it was intended to go down in October of this year. So if that happens, that'll be another undisputed championship. So I think that is great for the sport as a whole. And I think that it will help push boxing further and further here in the near term. And if you're a fan of the sport, you have to love these guys willing to take on each other to become undisputed, because this will get as close back to what we were accustomed to when you think of the best fighting the best, especially back in the days of the one belt era. I mean, yeah, you had to fight the best in order, if you were the man, then you were the man, Now, there were some fighters who were ducked, of course, throughout that process. But that being said, if you got that opportunity, you know that you beat the man. And we're going to have that with all of these undisputed unification fights. So hopefully we get that next. That'll be good for the sport. And I'd imagine it would be on one of these, like maybe Showtime or or the Zone, which I don't think it will be a pay-per-view. So gotta tip your hats to that as well, being able to get these high caliber matchups without it being pay-per-view. Now, of course, Canelo Triple G is going to be pay-per-view. That's coming up a little bit later in the year. But I guess that's the expectation with Canelo in some sense to meet his purse demands as well as Triple G. So I guess that's to be expected to a certain degree, even though the Zone said they wouldn't do pay-per-views. But of course, a lot of boxing promoters say a lot of things. That being said, moving on to another undisputed title fight that took place. Now, this was on the women's side. Jessica McCaskill, who's the undisputed 147-pound champion on the women's side. She has all of the belts. And she took on Alana Ibarra, who is a fighter out of Mexico, who is tall and long, especially for the division, 147 pounds. And I thought this was going to be a very good fight just leading into it, because I thought that the mentality of Ibarra would be to batten down the hatches and really come at Jessica McCaskill, who, as we know, is a very game fighter. McCaskill, she always brings it every time out, and she is certainly one of the best fighters out there, just thinking about it in totality. So all the belts were on the line, and Jessica McCaskill was in that rare top-tier form. She basically dominated Elena Ibarra to the degree of Elena Ibarra essentially quit on her stool after the third round. Now, McCaskill, she came out swinging, and I do mean swinging. She didn't care what Ibarra had to offer, so she came out in one attempt. She was trying to stop her. She was trying to get her out of there early, and that's the way it showed when she stepped out, because she immediately started to tee off with some hard right hooks that or overhand rights, a mix of those that were snapping Ibarra's head, and you could see that Ibarra was not taking those shots very well. She started to get some visible damage. So this fight only went 3 rounds. It only went 3 rounds, and they were all McCaskill. McCaskill was dominant, and Ibarra kept holding, and she tried to do what she could do to stop McCaskill, but McCaskill, she's very scrappy, so she's not going to let up, and she seemed to be in excellent top-tier condition for this fight as well. I was familiar with Ibarra, having seen her fight a couple of times, and I thought that she would be a challenge. As I mentioned, I thought her jab would be a problem, that length. She's about 5'9", somewhere around there. Which is, as mentioned, big for the division, or at least long for the division. And she is a Mexican fighter, so, Mexican fighters have that grit. When a going gets tough or that firepower is coming, they typically bomb back. But in this case, that was not really what we saw from Ibarra. She may have landed a few decent shots, but it was literally only a few. That was between the 3 rounds that it went. And ultimately, at the end of that third round, Ibarra was on her stool, and what was translated was that Ibarra stated something to the degree of, if Jessica McCaskill is going to keep holding, then I don't want to fight anymore. I want to go home to my son. And she has a son who I believe has some type of illness or something of that nature. And she's a single mom, so commend her for that. But that was what I heard, or at least what was translated, that she essentially no longer wanted to fight. She no longer wanted to fight McCaskill, and I thought that was one of the better fights that was gonna be there on the card. And yeah, she kind of pulled out of there. Hyphy, shout out Hyphy, what's up? Appreciate you dropping in, California. Yay! But yeah, thank you for dropping in, Hyphy. Hyphy says, big ups. I was surprised and disappointed in Alma Shorts to quit on her stool. I thought this was a 50-50 fight. Hey, Hyphy says it all right there. I mean, that speaks volumes. We're in a similar boat. I legitimately thought Ibarra had a chance as well. Having seen her in the past, yeah, I certainly didn't expect her to end the fight the way that she did. I mean, at first I thought the corner was trying to stop her from going out there and that she wanted to go out there, but it was actually the other way around. where the corner was trying to get her to go out there, and she wasn't trying to go out there. So that part of it certainly definitely made it a bit disappointing. I think I stated, I even tweeted out that I was surprised by this. I was certainly surprised by the way that ended. I mean, of course, Ibarra's the one that's in there throwing the punches, and she's eating the punches as well that are coming back from McCaskill. But I just thought, given the stakes, with this being undisputed, she could have had a chance to win all of the belts at 170 or 147 pounds. She had a chance to win all of the belts. Yeah, you heard that correctly. So every title was on the line. This was her opportunity. Being a Mexican fighter, being a female fighter on this particular stage, I just thought that, or I just did not expect it to. I did not expect her to bow out in the way that she did. And Hyphy mentions last night, Alma learned that she didn't have the heart of a fighter. Fighters learn a lot about themselves in that ring. Hey, Hyphy, you're 100% correct. I mean, yeah, that seems to be the case. She learned that. And yeah, that heart is a big piece of it. That heart is a big piece of it. Some fighters, hey, when the going gets tough, they just keep going, regardless of what happens. But I just think that she was in a sort of life-changing position. And I'm sure this was probably her biggest fight payday. This was certainly her biggest opportunity at a chance or a chance at these titles. Or at least all of them, a chance at becoming undisputed. And yeah, to bow out after 3 rounds like that, I mean, that is a tough pill to swallow. And I think I don't think it does justice for her in the future, as far as if she chooses to continue fighting or to come back at some point and try to fight. I think this limits her opportunities because it's, of course, not good for business if you essentially just don't want to fight or essentially quit, especially given that it had only gone 3 rounds at that point. And I mean, it's just one of those things. She's going to have to live with it, and maybe she can deal with it. And at the end of the day, hey, maybe she saw that the writing was on the wall, that it wasn't going to get any better for her, and she was going to continue to take damage or take hard shots. But I thought even in that 3rd round, right before she stopped, she did land. That's where she probably landed her best punches. As mentioned, it was a few of them. But I think that was the round where she saw her do her best. And her best wasn't enough, of course, and I don't think it would have been enough if the trajectory would have continued as it was. But man, I did think that she was a live dog in this fight, and yeah, it turned out to be the case there. The way that McCaskill came out ready for an actual firefight, I guess Ibarra wasn't ready for a firefight, and yeah, we never got the opportunity to see her make a true adjustment, and ultimately that led to a quick it was a stoppage, but it was by virtue of the opponent choosing to stop it. So we'll see what's next for Ibarra. I mean, hopefully she can recover and get her head in the right space and see if this is something she wants to continue to do. Hyphy, Jessica's been pretty impressive lately. She's been improving every fight and getting stoppages. Like Beterbiev, she looks great for a 37-year-old fighter. Hey, I agree with you there, Hyphy. She certainly does. I mean, she seemed to be in probably even better shape than she has been in the past. I mean, she looked to be, I use the term rare form, as they say. She was in rare form. I mean, she looked like she was ready to go all night. So if it was a firefight, or if Ibarra chose to, go punch for punch with her, then I think Jessica was ready for it. She seemed to be geared towards that type of fight. And I think that they weren't BSing in their statements leading up to the fight, saying that they were going for the knockout, that they were trying to stop Ibarra. It certainly looked like such with the way that McCaskill came out of the gates. She came out looking to get that stoppage. And you're right, at 37 years of age, she looks as best as ever. And I think she's improving as well. You can see she's become a bit more polished than when first on the scene. And I think that shows. So she'll give these fighters, many of these elite level fighters, a problem, those that are in or around that weight. Of course, that would be the question for her because she came in at 144 pounds. And I think Ibarra actually was somewhere around there as well. Despite her being a taller, longer fighter, she was not far off from 144 pounds. I think she was 144 point something as well. But Jessica McCaskill looks good. So that bodes the question of who next. She's taken out Cecilia Breakers, who was the longtime champion. That's how she ended up winning the titles. And there are others out there at 147 pounds. I think the person that was mentioned was Chantel Cameron, if I'm not mistaken, who is out of the UK. Let me see. I believe it's Chantel Cameron. She's a light welterweight title, or she had the light welterweight title. Let me see. But yeah, Chantel Cameron, I think she's with Matchroom Boxing, so the fight in itself should be easy to make. She's competing at super lightweight. So 140 pounds. This was 147, but I think that for an opportunity at the Undisputed Championships, I highly doubt she would want to turn something like that down. I think she'd go for it. And she has shown herself to be a pretty solid fighter, Chantel Cameron. As far as the female fighters out there, she is one who is very good. She took out Mary McGee. Yeah, that was a pretty much dominant win. She can box, and I think that you could argue she's a better just boxer from a fundamental standpoint than Jessica McCaskill. McCaskill has a level of grit and determination to her that I think would make it very interesting. I think she'd bring out the best in Chantel Cameron. And likewise, Cameron, I think, would really be gunning for it in that fight as well because she seems to have the goods and seems to be one of these fighters who wants to do great things as far as legacy is concerned. So that's a potential fight that is out there. Chantel Cameron versus Jessica McCaskill. And I think that it will be something I think it'll be a fight to watch. And hopefully it can be made. As mentioned, they're both Matchroom, if I'm not mistaken, or at least doing business with them. I know that McCaskill is represented by Rick Ramos. Shout out to them. They're active on social media and all that stuff. But I think it's a fight that can certainly happen. I don't see why Eddie wouldn't be down for it. So it's just a matter of where. I would say it's a matter of where this fight takes place. Cameron is big over in the U.S., over in the UK. So, hey, maybe there's a potential it could happen there. I'm sure McCaskill wouldn't be scared to travel, even if it meant her putting her titles on the line to travel. She just seems like she's game for anything. She's one of those fighters. She's down. I don't see her turning down the fight. I don't see Cameron turning it down. So this might be what we get next. And I think it bodes well for the sport, especially for the women in the sport. Now it's just a matter of how we continue to see them compete. And I think we're at an all-time high as far as some of the competition and parity across the board with women's fighting. There's still strides to go, of course, but as long as we're getting some of these elite level fights on the women's side, then I think that bodes well for what the women are doing in the sport. And I'm certainly all for it. And I'll continue to support. I want to see them do their thing. And that just adds to the list right there. And hopefully we get some of those big fights here shortly as we move forward. Those were the three big fights. There was also a fight, I want to say it was at 108 pounds or somewhere around there, 105, 108. Yeah, it was Hecky Butler versus Elwin Soto. Now this was taking place at the same time as the main event on the zone, Sor Rungvisai versus Bam Rodriguez, but this was an ESPN card that was on, and this was at light flyweight. So yeah, but Hecky Butler Butler, not as Budler. I want to say Butler, but but he ended up winning a decision. I believe it was unanimous. Yeah, it was unanimous over Soto. From what I did see, it looked like Soto started out pretty well, first 2 rounds, I would say. And then as time went on, he started to kind of lose some steam, and Butler had a knack for staying away from the best that Soto had to offer, and ultimately won a decision. There wasn't a ton of action there in the tail end, but Butler did knock Soto down in the 12th round. I just so happened to catch that. So I had it on the entire time that the other fight was going on, but I was just kind of more so glancing at it. But there at the tail end, yeah, Butler was in full control. I think it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to win. And, he was boxing from the outside. I think that, of course, Soto's corner, they weren't happy with it because their man, of course, wasn't able to get in there and really do anything. But that's just the nature of it. I mean, it's up to you to stop the fighter or cut the ring off or something of that nature. But Soto came up short. It's just one of those things. So this is a back-to-back losses for him because he lost prior to that to Johnathan Gonzalez, which was for the WBO world title. Now, that fight I did watch as well. That happened on Friday as a part of Pro Box. Let me see. Hyphy had mentioned, Chantel Cameron also has a lot of KOs for a woman. That's the fight to make unless Eddie Hearn wants to do an Undisputed 140 versus Undisputed 147 fight with Katie and McCaskill. Yeah, that's another one I was thinking of. Katie Taylor, and they had fought before, but I think McCaskill's gotten better since that last fight between Katie Taylor and Jessica McCaskill. But yeah, that would be an excellent one as well if that were somehow to happen. I mean, they're all in that same stable, so I think that bodes well for the potential matchups that are listed here. But yeah, Chantel Cameron versus McCaskill, that'll be a good one, just as well as Katie Taylor versus McCaskill. So hopefully we get some combination of that, or maybe even if it's Cameron and McCaskill fighting, and then Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano fighting again at some point, and then the winner of each of those taking on each other. I think that right there is a huge fight on the women's side as well. So hopefully we get some combination of those fights that are listed there. Heidi, yeah, definitely thanks for dropping that note for sure. But yeah, back to Johnathan Gonzalez. He's a 105-pound, 108-pound champion, junior flyweight. I believe that is the case. Let me see. Let me just make sure. He's the champion there. Johnathan Gonzalez, WBO junior flyweight champion right now. He beat Elwin Soto, who was just mentioning. But he also fought on Friday of this past week on the Pro Box TV card. And I like Pro Box TV. It's new. They have an app, and of course you can go by the website. But it's like $199, or not 100, but $1.99 a month, or $18 for the year, which is, I think, a hell of a great deal, a very good deal. Just thinking about it compared to some of the other streaming services. And they've had a number of quality fights take place. I just got wind of them probably a month ago, or a little over a month ago. And they have backing by the likes of, Roy Jones Jr. He's on the broadcast, Antonio Tarver, and Paulie Malignaggi. They're all three of them are there, and they're a part of the broadcast and the podcast that they have as well for Pro Box TV. Also, Mike Goldberg, who was the play-by-play or color commentary person for the UFC in the past. Well, he's now doing it on the boxing side. So I like what they have going there at Pro Box TV, and I think it's a great deal. They have a facility there in Florida that they fight out of. I think it's Plant City, Florida, or something like that. That's where they're based. Hi, Jack. What's up there, buddy? Boz is out today. Yeah, I didn't mention that, but he's out. He's out traveling. So we're going to get it back going with that boxing chit-chat stuff here next week or shortly thereafter. Appreciate you dropping in. Hi, Jekka. Good to see you. But Pro Box TV, if you haven't seen it, check it out. And then you have, if you sign up, you also have access to their archive of fights that they had thus far. and they do have a tournament of some nature going on at the current moment for I forget what division, but they have these like tournaments that are single elimination style, leading up to I guess a big purse for the fighters that are involved. Hyphy says Pro Box is a great idea. My only gripe is that it's difficult to log in at times, but other than that, it's good value for the cost. Yeah, I agree. Hyphy, definitely good value for the cost, for sure. You just think about that $18 for the year, and they're putting on some very quality fights. But yeah, I'd imagine there's still going to be some trial and error as they get to, especially as they grow, because it is, I would say, up and coming in some sense. But they seem to be gaining some steam, and who knows? I wonder if it's going to stay at the price point that it's at. Time will tell. Time will certainly tell, but I do think that the overall look and quality of the product that they're providing is very good. And for that price, I think it's certainly good, and it's good to hear the perspectives of both or all three of the former champions that are on there, Paulie, Roy, and Antonio Tarver, and we've seen each of them being a part of a major broadcast at some point, whether that's with Showtime or HBO. So it's good to see all three of them together, and I think they definitely provide a good insight towards the fights, and each of them have their own opinion, as you know, because they all each have their own personality. So it just makes it good in that sense. So, but yeah, they're putting on some good quality cards. So yeah, Johnathan Gonzalez, he's a Puerto Rican fighter. He took on Mark Anthony Barriga, who's a Filipino fighter who was 11-1 at the time. A very solid fighter. He was a 2012 Olympian, so he has the pedigree. And you can actually see that Barriga is pretty polished, even for this short amount of fights that he had. But this fight in itself, of course, it was tough for Barriga. He really couldn't get off the way he wanted. Gonzalez, he is the only Puerto Rican champion that is out there. That's something definitely worth noting if you think about it, because Puerto Ricans have a major staple or a major part of the sport. And he's the only champion right now out of Puerto Rico, period, or Puerto Rican in period, whether you're in Puerto Rico, U.S., or whatever. He's the only world champion right now, at least as it relates to the major belts. And he's holding the fort down. So he was able to really keep Barriga at bay. Barriga, he had his moments. One of the issues with Barriga, of course, he doesn't have a ton of power, but that being said, he can box well, and you can see that he has some steam on his punches, but he doesn't have that finishing power. And I think Gonzalez, knowing such, of course, he had no issue of really stepping in and really going for it at times. And it turned out to be a solid fight overall. Nothing to bark home about as far as like any like truly sustained action or fight of the year candidate type situation now. But it was just a solid matchup overall, and I thought Johnathan Gonzalez did what he had to do to get the victory. He played it well. He used his jab at times. He was able to work both from the outside and inside, so I think he controlled each facet of the game. And as mentioned, Barriga had his moments. He just felt just shy. As long as Barriga continues, to try and improve and all that stuff, I would say he's still right there in the picture, definitely as one of the better guys for the division, and he could see himself in another title fight at some point down the road. But I think it's going to just be a matter of him staying a bit more active and continue to hone his craft, because you can see that he has a high level skill set. So, but Johnathan Gonzalez right now is he's kind of on his game in his prime, ready to go. So he represents for Puerto Rico. It'll be interesting to see what's next for him. But we do know that there is one Puerto Rican champion out there, and that is Johnathan Gonzalez. So, I mean, as he gets some more shine, I think that bodes well for Puerto Rico, him as well, being one of the smaller fighters. And he's willing, like I said, he has the mentality of one of those guys who isn't afraid to exchange. He will get in there and mix it up. So I think that is a plus. I don't know if the intent is for him to take on the Hecky Butler guy or whatever, Hecky Butler, who just beat Elwin Soto, but that may potentially be a fight. I think it'll be probably more of a finesse type match, a boxing contest, because I think Butler will probably try to apply his trade from the outside, but Gonzalez will certainly be the type of guy who goes in, who looks for that stoppage or looks to get his opponent out there. He's not afraid to exchange, so that should make it at the very least somewhat interesting just from an overall standpoint. So, yeah, those were probably the major fights of the past weekend that took place. Also, just looking here, some that I haven't seen, or at least one that I haven't seen, was Sam Eggington. He took on Przemysław Zisk. And this is a Polish fighter who came in undefeated. So Eggington won. It looks like a unanimous decision, but Zisk, I'm just familiar with him only because he took on Tomi Silvanonen, the Finnish fighter that I know of. Got the interview back in like 2018. I was actually in Finland. Shout out Tomi Silvanonen, good guy there. But yeah, Zisk, I was familiar with him. Actually, on our YouTube, we have Zisk versus Silvanonen. I thought that Silvanonen won, and I'm not just saying it, with bias or being a friend. But yeah, Zisk, he's one of those Polish fighters who's tall, long, and he has a good jab. I would say he has a good jab, and if he does put his punches together, you can see that he's not bad. But I thought that he lost the fight with Tomi Silvanonen. It was, of course, in his backyard. It was in Poland. And I think that played a role. So Silvanonen ended up losing on the cards. But if you look at the fight, you'll see that all of the significant shots, for the most part, were landed by Silvanonen, and Zisk had some trouble keeping him off. But, that's how it is in the sport of boxing at times. Sometimes we get these calls that are these decisions that are questionable at the very least. Questionable. But Zisk, he's lost to Sam Eggington. Eggington is a rugged, battle-tested fighter who's been in with a number of guys. Eggington is skilled, but he's pretty much borderline on that sort of journeyman status. He loses to the elite of the division. That being said, he does pack some punch, and he can take a lot of damage as well. So he was able to defeat Zisk. I haven't seen the fight. May have to check that one out at some point just to kind of see how it went down with Zisk taking that first L. We'll see how he bounces back from this as well. Raymond Ford, he beat Richard Medina. This was on the DAZN broadcast. Pretty much dominant victory. Now, I brought this up to say that Raymond Ford, he looks pretty good, but I thought he lost that last fight. I think the kid he was fighting, man, they robbed him. It was broad daylight robbery right there. And he beat Raymond Ford, and he didn't get to the victory. His name was Edward Vasquez, and he came into the fight undefeated as well. And he lost a split decision to Raymond Ford. I swear, I know the term robbery is thrown out there at times, but they robbed this young man on that night, Edward Vasquez. If you haven't seen it, certainly you can check it out. It was probably in the DAZN archive or on YouTube. But Raymond Ford versus Edward Vasquez. And Matchroom, they're backing Raymond Ford, of course. He's one of their fighters. So ideally, I'm sure they would like to see him win and continue to look good and all that stuff. But he lost that last fight prior to this. But he looked good in this fight. And he was able to pull out a pretty much clear and non-controversial unanimous decision. The other guy who he was fighting, Medina, didn't really have much to offer. But we'll see where Raymond Ford goes from here. They're tossing around title contention and all that stuff. I think that I don't see him beating any of the champions, especially considering seeing that last fight where I know for sure, yeah, he's not going to beat any champions, especially right now. Hyphy says, you're not lying, though Ford beat Medina last night. He just doesn't impress me. Yeah. I mean, yeah, he looks good. He has you can see he has a good tool set. He seems to be pretty hungry. We've seen him a lot more often here as of late. He continually fights. He seems like he'll take any fight, you know what I'm saying, as long as it's on the table for him. But yeah, I'm with you there, Hyphy. Yeah, nothing certainly stands out that makes me think that, oh yeah, we better be on the lookout for this guy as being that next great champion or anything of that nature. But he, like I said, he has a good amateur background and he has a good tool set, a good mix of things. He's not super powerful or anything of that nature. He can put his punches together well. He has pretty decent reflexes, but definitely, I don't think he should be anywhere near world title right now. They mentioned a potential top 15 fighter. I'd like to see how he does with a top 15 type fighter. Maybe he does well, depending on who it is, who the opponent is. But I think with the right opponent, you can certainly get to him, and we're in agreement. At least I know myself and Hyphy, and I know many others sure out there that Ford certainly can be beat. And I thought he lost that fight, as mentioned. If you haven't checked it out, look up Ford versus Vasquez, and you'll see. But Matchroom is going to continue pushing him, and hey, we may see him in there for a title shot at some point. But yeah, I think that and I will say that even in thinking he lost the Vasquez fight, it wasn't for a lack of trying. He was trying the entire time. I just think he was he was outskilled on that night. And Vasquez, I think he's a lot better than what people might think if they just see he had that one loss to Raymond Ford. If you just look at that and not really dive into it. But yeah, Vasquez is a pretty solid opponent, and he came in with the right game plan to really nullify and have Raymond Ford basically looking confused at time. And I don't think he really thought he was going to win. He was super surprised himself that he actually won that fight. It was disappointing, and the judges, strike again, as they say. But yeah, we'll see what Raymond Ford does. I mean, as mentioned, if he's in a title shot, hey, I think he'll be a live dog in that sense of the word. But definitely, I don't see him as being a champion right now. I just can't see it. I can't see it at this current moment. But time will tell. If he continues to take tough fights and gets better, I feel like he needs to run it back with Vasquez. I think that is going to stay out there, at least in my mind. He's going to need to run that back and prove that he's better than Vasquez, because he's not right now. We'll have to see, though. Hopefully we see that again, because that seems to be the type of fight he needs right there if they really want to see him get better, unless they're just going to try and get him to a title shot by any means. But we'll see. And maybe one of these top 15 opponents takes him to those waters once again, and we'll see how he responds. But yeah, that's what went down this past weekend. Yeah, I think the last time we had talked about the Joe Smith Jr. versus Arthur Beterbiev, that was an excellent fight. But yeah, this past weekend, some decent boxing going on. And what's in store for next week? Let me see. That is next weekend. We do have Joe Joyce versus Christian Hammer. I see that's on the cards. I favor Joe Joyce in that fight, in which I'm sure some others do as well. Christian Hammer, he's all right. But yeah, Joyce should get past him. Marius Briedis is back in action. I think he's 37 years of age right now. It's cruiserweight. I think he has one of the belts, but he's very solid. Probably the number one cruiserweight out there, unless some people may consider Okolie to be that person. But I think it's Marius Briedis, at least until dethroned. Hopefully we get to see Okolie versus Briedis at some point. That's a fight that I think will be very interesting, and it will be the toughest test for Okolie, and we'll get to see what the future looks like for him. And I know they had spoke of Okolie going to heavyweight at some point. Maybe if he takes Briedis and defeats him, then that is something that happens at some point at playing. Also, we have Caleb Johnson is in action. Caleb Johnson is I think he was an Olympian for Great Britain at some point, and he fought Arthur Beterbiev, and he actually dropped him. The only person that dropped Beterbiev thus far. in what was a pretty solid fight. Caleb Justin, he ended up being stopped, but he's a pretty solid fighter just overall. So he's going to be in action. This is on Saturday the 2nd. And yeah, you have some other stuff coming up a little bit later thereafter. The likes of Derek Chisora fighting Israel Madrimov, going to take on Michael Soro again. Madrimov has looked good. There have been some moments where it kind of came down to earth, but he is a very solid fighter. I believe he's an Uzbek fighter as well. Kind of reminds me of Triple G. Just in general, kind of looks like him fighting style wise and has a similar shape and build. So yeah, he's definitely someone worth checking out. Then it looks like Ioka is in action against Donnie Nietes, so that should be a pretty good fight right there. That's going down on the 13th. It's going to be on a Wednesday, so I'm guessing it's taking place in Japan. So I'm sure the time is going to be pretty crazy. Then you have Arnold Barboza in there. Arnold Barboza, he's going to be fighting on the 15th. He's a 140-pounder. Looks very good. He's looked good. He beats Alex Oxedo. And I think that he's definitely someone worthy of a title shot. We'll see how he looks. I think it's been a while since he fought. But yeah, Joet Gonzalez is going to take on Isaac Dogbe there as well back in September. These are some fights going out. But yeah, Gonzalez Dogbe should be a pretty interesting one. No. But yeah, it should be cool though. Rodolfo, I'm here, although very late. Yeah, shout out Rodolfo. Appreciate you stepping in, buddy. Rodolfo Rivera Jr. Dropped into the mix. Yeah, we're wrapping up here. Rodolfo, appreciate you dropping by for sure. Facebook, hey there, bro. Sorry I can't participate. There must be Boz himself, I'm assuming. Yeah, who's out on travel, all good. Wanted to bring something regardless. There's something to chat and discuss about. But yeah, certainly we'll be back in that mix here a little bit later. You can expect that for sure. So yeah, old Boz, shout out Boz. We're gonna get it going again here, maybe next week or shortly thereafter. But as mentioned, yeah, a lot of great action this past weekend. We're gonna keep hitting you with stuff. Just released a video on the YouTube. You can certainly check out. It's on Jack Sharkey versus Max Smelling. The only, as far as under Marcus of Queensberry rules, the only championship fight where the belt changed hands via disqualification or a foul that took place. So definitely worth checking out. It's on the YouTube. Bruh, shout out to Boz, though. Rodolfo, yeah, definitely thanks for dropping in. Thank you, Boz, for dropping in. Hyphy, appreciate you providing that commentary. And Hijeka, thanks for dropping through. Bruce Gaz, as mentioned, Boxing Jazz. My mom for even checking this thing out. Appreciate it. We're in the mix. We're gonna keep this thing going here as we move forward. And Boz says shout out and thanks to Rodolfo as well. So appreciate you all dropping in. In the meantime, check back with us. We'll be back hopefully next week around the same time, same place, of course. But until then, be good. And hey, if you want to talk boxing at any point, feel free to hit me up. Have a good one.